I'm Marcus
So,
Henderson,
what do you think?
The
52
numbers
years
look
old,
good. This
standing
could
in the
work.
parking
Great.
lot of
Let's head to the
Riverside High
office.
School with 3 squirming 6-year-olds tugging at my hands. 25 years since graduation. And here I am at our class reunion, wondering if bringing Lily, Emma, and Ben was my smartest decision or my most foolish one. My silver Toyota minivan sits behind us, dotted with juice box stains and crackers ground into the seats. Not exactly the vehicle I'd imagined driving at this stage of life. But then again, nothing turned out quite like I'd planned. The autumn evening air carries that particular crispness. That reminds me of football games and first kisses. Oak leaves scatter across the pavement in shades of amber and rust. Through the gymnasium windows, I can see silhouettes of my former classmates, probably comparing vacation homes and retirement portfolios. "Daddy, I'm hungry," Lily announces, her dark curls bouncing as she pulls my arm. "We just ate, sweetheart," I remind her gently, adjusting the diaper bag on my shoulder. Emma, always the observer, stares up at the building. "Is this where you went to school?" "It is, honey. A very long time ago." Ben, my little explorer, has already started toward a nearby puddle. I catch him just in time, redirecting his energy toward the entrance. I take a breath. "We're here. Might as well go in." The gymnasium hasn't changed much. Same wooden floors, same basketball hoops, though someone's strung up white lights and set out tables with plastic tablecloths. A banner reads, "Class of 2000, 25 year. Reunion in our old school colors, blue and gold." Immediately I spot her, Jennifer, my ex-wife. She's standing near the refreshment table, her blonde hair styled in that same perfect wave she always favored. Designer dress, expensive jewelry catching the light. Next to her stands a man I don't recognize, tall and confident, with his hand resting possessively on her lower back. Jennifer's eyes land on me, then drop to the children. Her expression shifts through several emotions in quick succession. Surprise, disdain, something that might be satisfaction. She excuses herself from her companion and walks over. The scent of her perfume, different from what she used to wear, arrives before she does. "Marcus," she says, her voice carrying that particular tone I remember too well. "I heard you might come, and you brought them." The way she says them makes my jaw tighten. These aren't just them. These are Lily, Emma, and Ben. These are the children we created together. The children she walked away from when they were barely 2 years old. "Jennifer," I nod. "You look well." "I am well," she responds, glancing back at her companion. "That's Richard. He owns a chain of luxury car dealerships." "We're engaged." "Congratulations." An awkward silence stretches between us. Emma presses closer to my leg, sensing tension the way children do. Lily stares at Jennifer with open curiosity. The afternoon sun filtered through the windows of Madison General Hospital, casting long shadows across the pediatric ward's gleaming floors. Dr. Robert Mitchell stood at the nurse's station, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed the latest patient charts. At 52, with silver threading through his dark hair and permanent creases around his eyes from years of both smiling and worrying, Robert had seen countless children pass through these corridors. But something about the name on the chart before him made him pause. Emma Chen, 7 years old, cerebral palsy, profoundly deaf. Communication through basic sign language only. Robert closed the chart slowly, removing his glasses to rub the bridge of his nose. He'd been a single father for 3 years now, ever since his wife Sarah had passed from cancer. Their own daughter, Lily, was now 10, and those years of caregiving had taught him something profound about patience, about really seeing people beyond their circumstances. "Dr. Mitchell?" Nurse Patricia called softly. She was in her early 60s, a grandmother herself, with kind eyes that had witnessed decades of hospital stories. "The little girl in 304? Emma?" "She's been asking for you." Robert looked up, surprised. "Asking for me? But she's deaf, and I don't know much sign language beyond the basics." Patricia smiled gently. "She's been signing something repeatedly. One of the interpreters came by earlier and said it looks like help, and please. The thing is, doctor, she only does it when you walk past her room. She stops when other doctors come by." Robert felt something tighten in his chest. He'd noticed Emma during his rounds, of course. A small girl with dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold more understanding than most adults. Her body was rigid in her wheelchair, her movements limited by the cerebral palsy that had affected her since birth. Her father brought her in twice weekly for therapy sessions and regular checkups. "Where's her father now?" Robert asked, gathering the chart again. "Mr. Chen is at work. He's a line cook at the Chinese restaurant on 4th Street. Works double shifts most days to cover her medical expenses. He'll be here at 6 to take her home." Robert checked his watch. It was just past 4. He had rounds to finish, but something drew him toward room 304. Perhaps it was the memory of his own daughter, those difficult months when Sarah was dying, when Lily had been so scared and needed someone to truly listen. Perhaps it was simply the human need to respond when someone asks for help. He knocked gently on the doorframe, though he knew she couldn't hear it. The gesture was automatic, respectful. When he entered, Emma's eyes found him immediately. Her face, which had been blank and distant, suddenly became animated. Her right hand, the one with the most mobility, began moving in careful, deliberate signs. Robert moved closer, kneeling beside her wheelchair so they were at eye level. He'd learned long ago that meeting children where they were, physically and emotionally, made all the difference. "Hello, Emma," he said softly, though she couldn't hear him. He touched his chest and fingerspelled his name slowly. Robert. Then he signed the word he did know. "Friend." Emma's eyes widened slightly. Her hand moved again, more insistently now. "Please, help, the—" Signs were clear enough even to his untrained eye. But help with what? Robert pulled out his phone and opened a notes app, typing quickly. "What do you need help with, Emma?" "Can you show me?" He turned the phone toward her. Emma's eyes scanned the words, and Robert realized with a start that she could read quite well. Her hand moved toward the phone, and with great concentration, she managed to tap at the screen with one finger. It took time. Robert waited patiently, not rushing her, not looking away. Finally, words appeared. "Learn more words." "Father, too busy." "I have things to say." Robert felt his throat constrict. Here was this little girl, trapped in a body that wouldn't cooperate, unable to hear the world around her, and what she wanted most was simply to communicate more fully. Not fancy toys or special treatments. Just words. Just the ability to share what was inside her mind. He typed back, "I would like to help you, but I don't know much sign language. We would have to learn together." Emma's face transformed. Her smile was radiant, despite the difficulty her facial muscles had forming it. She nodded vigorously, her whole upper body moving with the effort. That evening, Robert waited until Emma's father arrived. David Chen was a slight man in his late 30s, wearing a stained cook's apron and looking exhausted in the way that only chronic worry and overwork can create. His eyes went immediately to his daughter, softening with a love that was palpable. "Mr. Chen, could I speak with you for a moment?" Robert asked gently. David's face filled with concern. "Is something wrong?" "Is Emma okay?" "She's fine," Robert assured him quickly. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something Emma asked me for." They stood in the hallway while Robert explained. David listened, his expression cycling through surprise, guilt, and then something like grief. "I know she needs more," David said quietly, his English accented but clear. "I try to learn with her at night after work, but I'm so tired. Sometimes I fall asleep during her homework time. I'm not enough for her." His voice cracked slightly. Robert shook his head. "Mr. Chen, you're working 2 jobs to give your daughter the medical care she needs. That's not enough, and that's heroic. What I'm offering is just extra help. If you'll allow it, I'd like to spend some time with Emma, learning sign language together. My daughter Lily is learning it in school as part of a special program. Maybe the 3 of us could practice together." David's eyes filled with tears. In his culture, accepting help could feel like admitting failure, Robert knew. But this wasn't about pride. This was about a little girl who wanted to share her thoughts with the world. "Why?" David asked simply. "Why would you do this? She's just a patient." Robert thought of Sarah, of those last months when neighbors and friends had rallied around their family. He thought of the casseroles left on their porch, the rides Lily received to school when he couldn't leave Sarah's bedside, the grandfather down the street who sat with Sarah so Robert could attend. Lily's school play. Kindness wasn't a transaction. It was a thread that connected humanity. She's not just a patient. Robert said quietly. "She's a little girl with something to say, and I have time to listen." The next week, Robert rearranged his schedule. 3 afternoons a week, during Emma's therapy sessions, he would spend an extra hour with her. He brought Lily along, and his daughter took to Emma immediately, the way children often do, seeing past the wheelchair and the limited movements to the person within. They started simply. Robert downloaded sign language apps, bought beginner books, and watched videos together on his tablet. Emma was a patient teacher, her face lighting up when they got signs right, gently correcting when they didn't. Lily, with the quick learning of youth, picked up signs rapidly and served as an interpreter of sorts, helping bridge the gaps. But it was the conversations themselves that transformed things. Once Emma had more words to work with, she began to share. She told them about the books she read on her special computer at home, the one with the head tracking, technology that let her turn pages, with eye movements. She talked about her favorite color, purple, her favorite food, her father's egg-fried rice, and her dreams. She wanted to be a teacher one day, maybe teaching other deaf children. She also shared her loneliness, how the other children at the hospital were sometimes scared of her wheelchair, her movements, how she couldn't go to regular school because of the intensive care she needed, how much she loved her father but worried about him because he looked so tired all the time. Robert found himself sharing too. He told Emma about Sarah, about loss, about how hard it had been to be both mother and father to Lily. Lily, in turn, talked about missing her mom, about how scary it had been, but also about the good memories they held on to. These conversations happened slowly, with pauses while Emma signed and Lily or Robert interpreted, with time for thinking between exchanges. There was no rushing. In a world that moved so fast, these quiet hours in the hospital became a sanctuary of sorts. Patricia, the nurse, often found reasons to pass by during these sessions. Other staff members began to notice the change in Emma, how she seemed more animated, more present. Even her physical therapist remarked that Emma seemed more motivated during exercises, as if having more to communicate about had given her more reasons to try. One afternoon, about 2 months into their learning sessions, Emma signed something that neither Robert nor Lily recognized. Emma, seeing their confusion, painstakingly typed on Robert's phone, "I want to tell my father I love him in a new way. Will you help me learn the signs?" Robert smiled. "Of course." "But Emma, he knows you love him," Emma typed again. "But I want to tell him all the reasons why. I have so many words now. I want him to know them all." So they practiced. Emma composed a letter in her mind, shared it with Robert and Lily piece by piece, and they worked together to translate it into signs that Emma could perform. It took weeks. Her movements were limited, but determination filled every gesture. Meanwhile, Robert had reached out to David, suggesting they meet for coffee before one of Emma's appointments. David had been hesitant, but Robert persisted gently. They sat in the hospital cafeteria, two fathers sharing the bond of loving their children fiercely. Robert noticed the permanent worry lines on David's face, the way his hands shook slightly from exhaustion. "How are you holding up?" Robert asked simply. David shrugged. "I manage." "For Emma, I manage. But who manages for you?" Robert asked gently. David looked away. "That's not important. She needs me." "She does," Robert agreed. "But she needs you healthy and present, not running yourself into the ground." "David, there are resources available. Support groups for parents of children with special needs. Respite care programs. Have you looked into any of these?" David's pride flared briefly, but then his shoulders sagged. "I don't even know where to start. Between work and Emma's appointments and everything else, I'm barely keeping my head above water." Robert pulled out a folder he'd prepared. Inside were printouts, contact information, applications for programs he'd researched. "Start here," he said. "Let me help you navigate this. That's what I do as a doctor, yes, but it's also what we do as people. We help each other." Over the next weeks, Robert helped David apply for additional assistance programs. They discovered Emma qualified for services David hadn't known existed. The hospital social worker, brought into the loop, found funding for improved home care equipment. Slowly, the crushing weight on David's shoulders began to lighten. One evening, David stopped Robert in the hallway. "Why are you doing all this?" he asked, echoing his question from months ago. "We're nobody to you." Robert thought carefully before answering. When my wife was dying, I felt so alone. But then people showed up. Not because they had to, not because I asked, but because they saw someone struggling and decided to help. I can't repay those specific people for what they did. Most of them have moved away or we've lost touch.
But I can pay it forward. I can see someone struggling and decide to help. That's all this is, David, just one person helping another. David's eyes filled with tears. He gripped Robert's hand tightly, unable to speak. 3 months after their learning sessions began, Emma was ready. She'd asked that her presentation to her father happen in the hospital garden, a small courtyard with benches and flowering, trees that the staff maintained, for patients and families. Robert and Lily helped Emma into her wheelchair and brought her outside. David arrived from work, still in his apron, confused about the special summons. "What's this about?" he asked, looking between Robert and his daughter. Robert smiled. "Emma has something she wants to tell you. Lily and I will interpret, but really, we're just here as witnesses." Emma's hands began to move. They moved slowly, sometimes shakily, but with absolute certainty, and as she signed, Lily spoke the words aloud, her young voice clear in the quiet garden. "Dear Father, I have learned new words so I can tell you all the things in my heart. I love you for waking up before the sun to make my breakfast. I love you for the way you smile when you read to me at night. Even when you're so tired you can barely keep your eyes open. I love you for carrying me when my wheelchair can't go somewhere I want to be. I love you for never making me feel like a burden, even though I know I am heavy to carry in many ways." David's face crumpled and tears began streaming down his cheeks. But Emma wasn't finished. "I love you for working so hard to give me doctors and medicine and a good life. I love you for talking to me like I'm smart, even when other people talk over me like I can't understand. I love you for being my father, my friend, my whole world. I love you for teaching me that being different doesn't mean being less. You are the best father any daughter could have, and I wanted to have enough words to tell you so." By the time Emma finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. David knelt beside his daughter's wheelchair, holding her hand against his wet cheek, saying "I love you" over and over in both English and Mandarin. Robert and Lily stood quietly nearby, witnesses to this moment of pure love. Patricia had somehow materialized, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Even a few other staff members had paused in the doorway, drawn by the emotion radiating from the small gathering. After David and Emma left that evening, Robert sat on one of the garden benches, Lily beside him. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Dad," Lily said quietly, "why are people scared of helping sometimes?" Robert considered the question. "I think sometimes people worry they won't do it right, or that it won't be enough, or maybe they're afraid of getting too involved, too attached. But here's what I've learned, sweetheart. Perfect help doesn't exist. But genuine help that comes from the heart,
always matters, even if it's small, even if it's imperfect. Like us learning sign language? Lily asked. We're not perfect at it. Exactly like that, Robert agreed. We're not expert signers, but we showed up, we tried. And that meant something to Emma. It meant something to me too, Lily said softly. I like having a friend like Emma. She makes me think about things differently. Robert put his arm around his daughter, pulling her close. She's made me think differently too. The sessions continued through the fall and into winter. Emma's vocabulary expanded dramatically. She began writing poetry, which Robert helped her submit to a magazine for young writers. When her poem about resilience was published, the celebration in the hospital was joyful and loud, with staff members Emma had come to know stopping by to congratulate her. David, with the additional support systems now in place, was able to reduce to one job plus part-time hours. He had energy to engage more with Emma, to learn sign language himself, to be more than just an exhausted provider. The change in him was remarkable. He began to smile more, to walk with less weight on his shoulders. One winter afternoon, Robert received a call from Patricia. Dr. Mitchell, you need to come to the garden, now. He rushed out, worried something was wrong. But when he arrived, he found Emma, David, Lily, and what seemed like half the hospital staff gathered around something, in the center of the courtyard. It was a bench, a new wooden bench with a brass plaque that read, in honor of Dr. Robert, Mitchell and Lily Mitchell, who taught us that kindness is a language everyone can speak. Robert felt his eyes burn with tears. This is too much. David stepped forward. It's not enough, he said firmly. You gave me back time with my daughter. You gave Emma the words she needed. You taught both of us that asking for help isn't weakness. How do you thank someone for that? Emma's hands moved in signs that Robert now understood perfectly. You showed up when I asked for help. That's everything. Robert looked around at all these faces, these people he'd come to care about. He thought about how a simple decision to listen, to really see a little girl's plea for help, had rippled outward in ways he never could have imagined. I learned as much from you as you learned from me, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Maybe more. That evening, as Robert and Lily drove home through the early darkness, Lily said, Dad, do you think Mom would be proud of us? Robert didn't hesitate. I know she would be, honey. Your mom always believed that we're here to help each other through this life. She lived that belief every day. I think she'd be very proud of both of us. They drove in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Lily added, I want to keep learning sign language. Maybe I could be an interpreter someday. Robert smiled. I think that would be wonderful. And in the meantime, we have a friend who's an excellent teacher. The years that followed brought changes, as years always do. Emma grew stronger in some ways, even as her condition remained challenging. She became an advocate, using her expanding vocabulary and Robert's help with technology to connect with other disabled children online, offering encouragement and friendship. David met someone, a kind woman who worked at the community center and who took to Emma immediately. The three of them became a family. And watching Emma sign Mother to this woman at their small wedding was another moment that left Robert in tears. Lily went on to become fluent in sign language, volunteering at schools for deaf children throughout her teenage years. The confidence and compassion she gained from her friendship with Emma shaped her into a remarkable young woman. And Robert continued his work at the hospital, but with a deeper understanding of what it meant to truly care for patients. He started a program pairing medical students with long-term pediatric patients, teaching the next generation of doctors that medicine was about more than diagnosis and treatment. It was about seeing the whole person, about listening to what wasn't always spoken aloud. On quiet days, Robert would sometimes sit on that bench in the hospital garden, remembering the afternoon when a little girl had signed, Please help me, and he'd said yes. Such a small moment, such a simple choice. But it had changed everything. He thought about how fear almost keeps us from helping. Fear that we won't do it right, that we don't have enough to offer, that we'll get too involved. But what if we pushed past that fear? What if we just showed up, imperfect and uncertain, but willing? The world didn't need perfect helpers. It needed present ones. It needed people who saw someone struggling and decided that mattered more than convenience or comfort. It needed folks who understood that sometimes the most profound thing you can do is simply pay attention when someone asks for help. As the sun set over the garden, Robert closed his eyes and felt grateful. Grateful for Emma's courage in asking. Grateful for David's willingness to accept help. Grateful for Lily's open heart. Grateful for all the small moments of connection that had woven together into something beautiful. In the end, that's what kindness was. Not grand gestures or perfect solutions. Just showing up. Just listening, just caring enough to try, just being human together.